Rowan's fingers closed around the moonstone Luna ring before Evelyn understood that the council hearing had become an execution. 300 wolves watched from the great hall as the Alpha King pulled the silver band from her finger. Its sharpened edge opened her skin, and one bright drop fell silently. It struck the council notice, spread across the obsidian table. The paper accused Evelyn of selling Crownfang's northern defense routes to Obsidian Ridge. Beside it lay a pack ledger, bearing her signature, and a medical file sealed by the royal healer. Serena Voss stood beside Rowan, pale and trembling beautifully. "She carries my heir," Rowan announced. His voice rolled through the pillars with enough alpha power to force weaker wolves to lower their eyes. "Until this betrayal is judged, Serena will stand as acting Luna." Evelyn looked at him. Not Serena. The mate bond twisted beneath her ribs, viciously alive. She had negotiated the grain treaties that fed his armies. She had rebuilt the border network after the Ashfall War. She had slept beside him while assassination threats crowded his desk. Yet Rowan would not meet her gaze for more than a heartbeat. Pride held him straighter than truth could. "Let me examine the crystal," Evelyn said. The security crystal hovering above the table showed her cloaked figure passing a map to an obsidian courier. The image was clean, too clean. "Call an independent healer. Open the original ledger." Gideon Voss smiled without warmth. "Traitors always request more time, Luna." Rowan removed the ring completely. Cold air touched the pale groove it left behind. "The northern armies march by dawn," he said. "Gideon's alliance keeps this kingdom standing. I cannot gamble thousands of lives on your denial." "No," Evelyn replied softly. "You are gambling them on your fear." A murmur moved through the hall. Serena lowered her lashes, one hand resting over a womb that appeared flat beneath her white gown. She looked fragile enough to protect, and innocent enough to believe. Only Evelyn noticed the triumph hidden in the careful curve of Serena's mouth. Rowan noticed nothing. "Give me the royal seal," Rowan ordered. "Then kneel, and acknowledge Crownfang's new Luna." The command struck Evelyn's bones, pressing down with the weight of pack law. Several wolves winced for her. Mason Reed, Rowan's beta, stared at the floor, his clenched fist shaking beside his sword. He knew something. Evelyn looked down at the notice. Royal seal. Council seal. No Mooncourt seal. The omission changed everything. Rowan could humiliate her, remove her chambers, and suspend her authority, but under the three-seal law, he could not lawfully erase her title tonight. His haste had created the only door left. She reached for the silver letter knife. Guards stepped forward, but she cut her thumb before they could stop her. Blood welled across her skin. "Under the provisional severance clause," she said, "I surrender Crownfang's protection until a lawful trial determines my guilt." Rowan finally looked directly at her. Alarm. "Evelyn," he warned, suddenly quieter. Perhaps he had expected tears. Perhaps he had expected her to fight for the ring, the throne, or him. She pressed her bleeding thumb to the notice and signed beneath the accusation. "You chose your alliance," she said. "I choose my dignity now." She set the royal seal on the floor between them. The metal struck stone with a sound like a verdict. Then she turned. No one blocked her path. The wolves parted in silence, ashamed but obedient. Behind her, Rowan breathed her name once. She did not slow or look back. Serena extended her hand. Rowan placed the Luna ring upon her finger before the doors had fully closed behind Evelyn. For one breath, nothing happened. Then the moonstone flashed white. Serena gasped as heat bit into her flesh. A dark crescent burned beneath the band, crossed by 7 tiny stars. Gideon seized her wrist and dragged the ring beneath her sleeve. His face lost color. He recognized the forbidden crest immediately. House Asterion, the bloodline his council had erased 18 years earlier. Beyond the doors, Evelyn walked alone into the storm, unaware that her blood had just awakened the law. Rain followed Evelyn for 3 days. It soaked through her cloak, gathered inside her boots, and turned the forest trail into black mud. Beneath her shirt, the blood-stained severance paper remained folded inside an oilskin pouch. She guarded it more carefully than food. Without that document, she was merely a banished wolf trespassing between territories. With it, she was a Luna awaiting lawful judgment. The distinction might keep her alive. The mate bond did not care about laws. Each mile away from Rowan pulled the invisible tether tighter beneath her ribs. Pain came in waves, sharp enough to blur the trees. Sometimes she felt his anger through it, sometimes confusion. Once, near dawn, She felt a violent surge of panic that could only have belonged to him. Evelyn kept walking. At midday, she reached the Crown Fang boundary stone. The carved wolf's head had been split by lightning years ago. Beyond it lay the neutral zone, then the western forest claimed by Obsidian Ridge. She placed one hand against the cold stone. Her wolf recoiled. The pack bond had connected Evelyn to Crown Fang since Rowan marked her as Luna. It had carried the faint presence of thousands of wolves, fear, hunger, grief, celebration, all humming beneath her thoughts. Crossing the border after severance would end it. Evelyn stepped forward. The bond snapped. Agony tore through her spine. She collapsed into the mud, unable to breathe. The voices of Crown Fang vanished at once, replaced by a silence so absolute it felt like deafness. Her fingers dug into the earth. She wanted to scream Rowan's name. Instead, she bit the inside of her cheek until blood filled her mouth and forced herself onto one knee. A twig broke behind her. Evelyn froze. 3 men moved between the trees. Their clothing was ragged, their faces smeared with dirt, but they approached in formation. Rogues did not maintain equal distance. Rogues did not conceal their scents with crushed wolfsbane. Assassin did. The council prefers clean endings, the tallest one said. Evelyn rose slowly, weakness trembling through her legs. Then it should have sent cleaner men. She drew the silver dagger strapped beneath her cloak. The first attacker lunged. Evelyn turned, rather than retreating. His blade passed beside her shoulder. She drove her elbow into his throat, slashed his forearm, and ran toward the ravine ahead. She had studied this border while redesigning Crown Fang's defense routes. The ground narrowed between 2 limestone walls before dropping sharply into a flooded channel. The assassins followed, exactly as she intended. Evelyn kicked loose a rotted support beneath an abandoned hunting bridge. The timber collapsed behind her. 1 man fell into the channel. Another struck the stone wall hard enough to lose his weapon. The tallest attacker shifted halfway, claws breaking through his fingers. Bond sickness struck Evelyn again. Her knees buckled. He seized her cloak and dragged her backward. She twisted, drove the silver dagger through his palm, and smelled burning flesh. As he roared, his sleeve pulled back. Dark red wax marked his wrist. The seal bore 5 claws surrounding a crown. The Voss family crest. A massive black wolf crashed through the brush and struck him from the side. More wolves appeared behind it, armored patrol members wearing the Obsidian Mountain insignia. The surviving assassins tried to flee. They did not reach the trees. Evelyn remained standing until a broad-shouldered man stepped into the ravine. Cassian Blackwood wore no crown, yet every wolf around him lowered its head. His eyes moved from the bodies to Evelyn's dagger, then to the severance paper she pulled from beneath her cloak. "I invoke border sanctuary," she said. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "Under the first refuge law, until my accusation is heard by an independent court." Cassian studied the royal seal, the missing moon court mark, and the Voss wax on the dead man's wrist. "You knew the law," he said. "I helped revise it." Something almost like respect entered his expression. "Take her to Mara's cabin," he ordered. "She is not a prisoner. No one questions her without permission." Evelyn woke hours later beneath heavy blankets. A gray-haired healer stood beside the bed, reading a newly written medical file. Cassian waited near the door, far enough away to offer privacy. Healer Mara looked troubled. "The bond damage is serious," she said, "but it is not the only reason you collapsed." Evelyn's hand tightened around the moonstone pendant at her throat. Mara lowered the file. "You are approximately 6 weeks pregnant." The room became perfectly still. Then the pendant warmed beneath Evelyn's palm. A faint silver pulse moved through the stone, answering the tiny heartbeat inside her. Mara stared at it. "That child does not carry royal blood alone," she whispered. By the end of her first week in Moonhaven, Evelyn had learned which floorboard creaked when the harbor bells rang, and how long she could stand before nausea forced her to sit down again quietly. To everyone in the outpost, she was Eva Hart, a widowed bookkeeper seeking work after losing her home in the eastern floods. Nobody asked why she slept with a dagger beneath her pillow each night. Cassian offered her rooms inside Blackwood Keep, a guard outside her door, and enough gold to disappear permanently. Evelyn refused all 3. Sanctuary, she reminded him, was protection, not ownership disguised as generosity or charity. Instead, she rented a narrow room above Mara's apothecary and worked downstairs sorting remedies, copying accounts, and measuring herbs. Her pregnancy remained hidden beneath loose sweaters, though every scent sharpened until ordinary lavender became overwhelming. At night, when the outpost quieted, Evelyn pressed both hands over her abdomen and listened for a heartbeat she could not hear. Fear came first. Then, determination. Rowan would never use this child as leverage. Still, silence carried its own cruelty. From the window, she watched fathers lifting children onto their shoulders and mothers arguing over supper. She wondered whether her child would someday ask why no one came looking. On the 12th morning, Mara opened 3 supply crates and cursed. Bottles labeled fever tonic contained watered vinegar. Bandages meant for the western villages had been replaced with cheap cloth that tore under pressure instantly. Cassian arrived before noon, bringing his quartermaster and 2 armed guards. The quartermaster blamed human merchants. Mara blamed smugglers. Evelyn said nothing until she noticed every crate carried an intact obsidian wax seal without damage. "The thieves never opened them," she said. Cassian turned toward her. Evelyn weighed 1 crate, then another. Both were 6 pounds lighter than the figures recorded when they supposedly left the mountain storehouse that morning. "The contents were exchanged before sealing," she continued, "and whoever did it knew which villages were desperate enough not to complain." Cassian's quartermaster stiffened. Evelyn saw guilt cross his face before anger replaced it completely. Cassian ordered the storehouse locked, then asked Evelyn to inspect the shipping records. 3 hours later, she found duplicated wagon numbers, altered weights, and payments routed through a merchant controlled by a council cousin secretly. The stolen medicine was recovered before nightfall. 2 villages received their supplies, and the quartermaster was arrested. Cassian thanked Evelyn publicly, but his gaze remained unreadable, as though her answer had confirmed something private important. The next day, he brought her a leather ledger and asked whether Moonhaven could afford another winter convoy. Evelyn found 7 errors within minutes, including one expense so obvious that she almost laughed aloud once. "You invented this shipment," she said. "No wagon can carry 4 tons across Raven Pass in November." Cassian leaned against the table. "I wanted to know whether your first success was skill or luck alone." Evelyn closed the ledger. "And now I know Crownfang did not understand what it discarded." The words struck too close to her wound. She rose, but dizziness forced one hand onto the table edge. Cassian did not touch her. He waited until she steadied herself, then placed a sealed employment contract beside the ledger. It granted her authority over Moonhaven's civilian supply network and freedom to resign any time freely. No oath, no packmark, no claim over her child. Evelyn read every line twice before signing Eva Hart beneath the final clause. For the first time since leaving Rowan, safety resembled a choice again. That evening, she found Cassian waiting inside the darkened apothecary. Her dagger appeared instantly. He raised both empty hands, but his attention rested on the moonstone pendant, glowing faintly against her sweater near her heart. "My mother gave me this," Evelyn said, "before she died." Cassian's expression changed. "Your mother did not die as a village healer. She died protecting records that Gideon Voss wanted erased forever from royal history." Evelyn's grip tightened around the pendant. "How do you know that?" Cassian stepped into the moonlight, his voice carrying neither triumph nor threat. "Because I knew her, Evelyn Asterion Hart, and I know you too." Winter reached Obsidian Ridge 2 weeks early. Snow buried Raven Pass overnight, cutting the village of Grayfen off from Moonhaven's central storehouses. 40 families remained trapped beyond the mountains, with less than 6 days of grain. Fever had already spread through the children. Cassian's war council wanted soldiers sent through the pass. "They will lose half the horses before reaching the summit," Evelyn said. She stood over the campaign table with one hand, supporting the curve of her growing abdomen. 6 months had passed since she entered Moonhaven. Her pregnancy could no longer be hidden, but her child's bloodline remained known only to Mara and Cassian. General Torrin frowned. "Then we break the ice road with explosives and bury Grayfen beneath an avalanche." The room fell silent. Cassian watched Evelyn move wooden markers across the map. He had stopped testing whether she could identify problems. Now he waited to see whether she could solve those that had defeated his oldest advisors. Evelyn proposed trading obsidian iron and healing tinctures for grain, held by 3 smaller packs south of the frozen river. Their wagons could reach Grayfen through lowland territory without crossing Raven Pass. The first Alpha refused. The second demanded double payment after learning Cassian was desperate. The third, Alpha Rena of Willowmere, agreed to meet Evelyn but dismissed Moonhaven's request as an obsidian attempt to control her territory. Evelyn returned from the negotiation furious and empty-handed. Cassian found her in the supply hall, tearing apart her own proposal, line by line. "You were right about the route," he said. "A correct route does not feed children." She discovered her mistake before dawn. She had offered each pack a separate trade, forcing them to bear the risk alone. Instead, she created a shared exchange. Willowmere would supply grain, Stonebrook would provide wagons, and Pine Hollow would receive obsidian medicine in return for safe passage. No pack would become dependent on Cassian. All three would benefit. The agreement was signed 3 days later. Grayfen received food before its last storehouse emptied. Evelyn accompanied the convoy herself, distributing fever tonic while Cassian's soldiers cleared roofs and repaired frozen wells. When an elderly woman tried to kneel before her, Evelyn caught her shoulders. "I am not your Luna," she said gently. The woman looked toward the wagons. "Maybe that is why you remembered us." Back in Moonhaven, Cassian called a formal council session. Before every commander and village representative, he placed a dark silver seal before Evelyn. "This grants you a permanent seat," he announced, "with full authority to challenge my decisions concerning civilian welfare and trade." Evelyn studied the contract attached to it. Moonhaven's civilian network would remain independent from Obsidian Military Command. Cassian could not absorb its stores, appoint its officers, or claim its members through pack law. "You prepared this before Grayfen," she said. "I prepared it after you refused my castle." A faint smile touched her mouth. Trust did not arrive like a mate bond. It came quietly, through doors left unlocked, and power written down, where it could not be withdrawn on a wounded man's impulse. Spring arrived during Maeve's birth. Rain hammered the apothecary roof, while Mara issued commands, and Evelyn fought through hours of pain. Cassian waited outside the room. He did not enter when Evelyn screamed. He did not use concern as permission. Near dawn, a newborn's cry broke through the storm. Mara wrapped the baby in a soft gray blanket and placed her against Evelyn's chest. Maeve opened dark blue eyes beneath a crown of black hair. Evelyn touched one trembling finger to her daughter's cheek. "You belong to no throne," she whispered. "You belong to yourself." Cassian met Maeve only after Evelyn invited him inside. He stood beside the bed, visibly uncertain for the first time since she had known him. "She is small," he said. "She has been alive for 10 minutes. Then she is doing well." Evelyn almost laughed. A guard entered before sunrise carrying a captured courier's satchel. Inside lay an assassination order authorizing Evelyn's death. Rowan's royal seal had been pressed into the black wax. The room turned cold. Evelyn read the command twice. Rowan had signed away her life after taking everything else. Cassian placed the order beside her blood-stained severance paper. Then he pointed to a hairline fracture inside the stamped crown. "The authentic royal seal does not carry this mark," he said. "This one was copied from a damaged mold." Evelyn looked down at Maeve. Someone had wanted her dead badly enough to forge a king's authority, and Rowan had built a court where they could do it. 3 years after Evelyn vanished, Crownfang's granaries stood half empty. The first winter had been blamed on storms, the second on damaged trade roads. By the third, even Rowan's most loyal advisors stopped pretending nature was responsible. In the lower villages, families watered their soup to make it last. Royal guards waited 2 months for wages. Yet Serena filled Moonspire Palace with musicians, imported wine, and white roses that froze before sunrise. "The people need confidence," she told Rowan as servants prepared another banquet. "A poor court invites rebellion. A starving village invites it faster." Rowan stood beside the council chamber window, watching wagons leave the palace without grain. They carried silver north to Gideon's private army instead. Serena's hand tightened around the moonstone Luna ring. The ring had never accepted her. Whenever she pressed it against a Luna seal, the moonstone remained dark. On colder nights, the silver heated until it blistered her skin. She concealed the burns beneath lace gloves and claimed an old allergy. That morning, however, Rowan had seen smoke rise from her finger. "The ring worked for Evelyn," he said. Serena's expression sharpened before softening into practiced hurt. "Then, perhaps it misses the woman who betrayed you." The mate bond beneath Rowan's ribs stirred painfully. For 3 years, it had remained a faint, damaged thread too weak to follow, too stubborn to die. He had told himself Evelyn was hiding with Obsidian Ridge, perhaps laughing at Crownfang's decline from Cassian Blackwood's bed. The thought had once made him furious. Now it made him ashamed. Every system Evelyn had managed was failing. She had known which villages needed grain before their alphas requested it. She had negotiated river access without surrendering territory. She had kept the royal guard loyal by paying their families first. Serena knew how to wear silk. Evelyn had known how to hold a kingdom together. The council doors opened. Mason Reed entered carrying a leather-bound ledger wrapped in gray cloth. Rowan dismissed the guards. Mason placed the book on the table, but kept one hand over it. "Before you read this, you should know I failed her." Rowan's wolf rose inside him. "Explain." The ledger presented at Evelyn's hearing was false. Silence swallowed the room. Mason removed the cloth. The original pack ledger bore old water stains along its spine, and Evelyn's private accounting marks in the margins. Rowan opened it. The transfers Gideon had called payments to Obsidian were clearly labeled emergency grain relief. Every shipment had gone to border villages abandoned by the council after the Ashfall War. Obsidian had not purchased Crownfang's defense routes. Cassian had provided wagons to deliver Crownfang food. Evelyn had protected Rowan's people, while his council accused her of treason. "You had this?" Rowan asked. Mason's face tightened. "I found it 2 days after she left. Gideon threatened civil war if I challenged the ruling. I told myself I was protecting the pack. You protected your position." "Yes." The honesty struck harder than an excuse. Rowan turned another page and found Evelyn's handwriting beside a list of winter stores. "Reserve these for the Eastern children. Do not release them for palace use." His fingers stopped over the ink. She had written those words hours before he took her ring. A sharp pain tore through the mate bond. Rowan gripped the table as panic, distant but unmistakable, flashed across the connection. Evelyn was alive and afraid. He crossed the palace without calling his guard. The Royal Infirmary archives were locked, but one Alpha command sent the keeper trembling for the keys. Rowan searched Serena's records first. There was no original blood test, no examination notes, no healer's confirmation of pregnancy, only a copied medical file carrying Dr. Nora Keene's signature. He pulled the registry from the shelf and traced the entries from the night of Evelyn's banishment. One line had been scraped away, but the pressure of the healer's pen remained visible beneath the damaged paper. Rowan held it toward the candle. The hidden words emerged. Luna Evelyn Hart. Examination requested. Bond distress. Pregnancy suspected approximately 6 weeks. The room tilted. Evelyn had left carrying his child, and someone inside his palace had erased the proof. 3 years after Evelyn entered Moonhaven as a hunted woman, 5 Alpha SEALs rested before her. The council chamber had once been an abandoned customs house overlooking the Western River. Now its stone walls displayed the emblems of Willowmere, Stonebrook, Pine Hollow, Obsidian Ridge, and Moonhaven's independent settlements. No soldiers had forced those packs to join. No mate bond held them together. Each Alpha had signed the Moonhaven Accord because Evelyn's trade routes kept their children fed, and her laws prevented stronger packs from swallowing weaker ones. Alpha Rena rose first. "We grant Evelyn Hart the High Regent seal, with authority to represent this coalition before any throne or council." Cassian placed his vote last. 1 vote, equal to every other Alpha. He did not crown Evelyn. He did not claim credit for what she had built. He simply slid the dark silver seal across the table and lowered his head with the others. Maeve clapped from Mara's lap. The 3-year-old had Evelyn's serious expression and Rowan's deep blue eyes, though she currently cared far more about the honey cake in her hands than the authority being placed before her mother. Evelyn closed her fingers around the seal. For years, Rowan had made her power dependent on his approval. Moonhaven had given it back through written law. "I accept," she said. "Only while this coalition retains the right to remove me by public vote." A murmur of approval moved through the room. That evening, Evelyn followed the moonstone pendant's growing warmth into the oldest tunnels beneath Moonhaven. Cassian walked behind her, carrying a lantern, while Mara held Maeve's hand. The passage ended at a circular door, carved with a crescent, surrounded by 7 stars. The same forbidden symbol burned into Serena's hand 3 years earlier. Evelyn pressed her pendant into the hollow at its center. Nothing happened. Then she understood. She cut her palm and placed it against the stone. Silver light raced through the carvings. The door opened with the sound of rock grinding against forgotten bones. Inside stood shelves of sealed records, bloodline scrolls, and crystal memories untouched by dust. At the chamber's center rested the first moonstone, white as winter beneath the earth. Evelyn approached it alone. The stone responded to her blood. A woman appeared within its surface, dark-haired, exhausted, and unmistakably familiar. Evelyn stopped breathing. Her mother. "My name is Ilara Asterion," the memory said. I serve as the final moon arbiter. The recording revealed that House Asterion had once possessed the legal authority to audit royal taxes, investigate council seals, and summon a sovereign trial against even an alpha king. Gideon Voss had ordered the bloodline erased after Alara discovered that the council was stealing war levies from small packs and using the silver to purchase private armies. Evelyn's knees weakened. Her mother had not died from illness. She had been murdered for protecting records. A smaller hand slipped from Mara's grasp. Pretty light, Maeve whispered. Before anyone could stop her, she touched the first moonstone. The chamber shook. Two symbols appeared beneath her palm, the Veil crown and the Asterion crescent. The moonstone pendant rose from Evelyn's chest, glowing in answer. A bloodline scroll unrolled by itself. Maeve Hart, daughter of Evelyn Asterion Hart and Rowan Vale. Royal heir by blood. Moon arbiter heir by maternal descent. Cassian's wolf surfaced in his eyes. Mara pulled Maeve back, but the child only frowned at the glowing stone. Did I break it? No, little moon, Evelyn whispered. You opened it. Another scroll emerged. It contained the law Evelyn needed. A surviving Asterion could summon sovereign trial if two independent alphas witnessed the claim, and the arbiter agreed to place her own actions under examination. The law did not make Evelyn queen. It made her accountable enough to judge one. She turned toward Cassian. You knew my mother, his silence answered before his voice did. I knew Gideon was hunting her, he admitted. I helped her cross the western border. She made me swear never to reveal she had a child unless the Asterion seal awakened. You watched me search for answers for 3 years. I kept an oath to a dying woman, and broke my trust to do it. Pain crossed his face, but Evelyn stepped away before he could defend himself. Trust built slowly. Secrets could still crack it in an instant. The moonstone flared again. A final memory formed across its surface. Gideon stood beside Alara on the night she died, and on his hand gleamed the Luna ring that should have been locked inside Rowan's royal vault. Serena poured the poison into Rowan's wine with a hand that did not tremble. The liquid was clear, nearly scentless, and slow enough to resemble exhaustion rather than murder. By dawn, it would weaken his control. By noon, the council would call him unstable. She had learned long ago that frightened men were easier to rule than dead ones. Rowan entered the private council chamber carrying the original pack ledger beneath one arm. Mason followed, pale but resolute. Gideon remained seated at the far end of the table, surrounded by 3 council elders whose armies depended on his silver. Serena rose and placed one hand over her heart. You summoned me? Rowan dropped the ledger onto the table. You were never pregnant. The room went still. For one fraction of a second, Serena's expression emptied. Then tears gathered instantly in her eyes. I lost the child. There is no examination record, because Dr. Nora feared the grief would destroy me. Nora's signature was copied. Serena looked toward Gideon as though seeking protection. It was a careful performance, but Rowan saw the signal pass between them. Gideon leaned back. Your Majesty, you have not slept properly in months. This obsession with a traitor is becoming dangerous. My kingdom is starving because your council stole from it. The elders shifted. Rowan's wolf pressed against his skin, furious and awake. The mate bond had pulsed again during the night, carrying Evelyn's fear and something else determination. She was alive. Perhaps his child was too. Serena approached him slowly. You are ill, Rowan. Let me help. She offered the wine. He stared at the glass. 3 years earlier, he would have taken it without question. Now he smelled bitter almond beneath the spice. Rowan struck the goblet from her hand. It shattered across the stone floor. Serena recoiled with a convincing scream, but Gideon did not. His eyes hardened. You see threats everywhere, Gideon said. The Dominion cannot survive a king who has lost control. Outside, boots moved through the corridor. Council soldiers. Rowan realized the meeting had never been an interrogation. It was a coronation without a crown. Across the palace, Mason hurried through the abandoned infirmary passage, carrying a stolen ring of keys. He found Dr. Nora Keene behind a reinforced door, thinner than he remembered but still standing straight. You took your time, she said. I was a coward. Yes. Mason accepted the judgment and unlocked her chains. Nora crossed to a hidden cabinet and removed a sealed medical file from beneath a false shelf. The original records. Serena's blood showed no pregnancy. Evelyn's showed elevated royal pheromones and early fetal development. Mason swallowed. Why did you not speak? Gideon locked me here before sunrise. She opened another drawer and withdrew a small security crystal wrapped in linen. Mason recognized it immediately. The original recording, Nora said. Serena's servant dropped it while replacing the archive copy. I kept it because I knew someone would eventually need the truth. They escaped through the laundry tunnels while council soldiers stormed the royal wing. By sunset, Rowan had barricaded himself inside the throne chamber with 20 loyal guards. Gideon controlled the gates. Serena controlled the council proclamation, declaring Rowan temporarily unfit to rule. But Serena's triumph lasted only until a servant entered, carrying a message intercepted from Mason. It contained one sentence. The child survived. Serena read it twice. Then she crossed to the mirror and slowly removed the lace glove, covering her burned hand. Beneath the moonstone Luna ring, the Asterian mark had darkened into a permanent scar. If Evelyn had borne Rowan's heir, Serena's claim was finished. If the child carried Asterian blood, Gideon's entire conspiracy could be judged under ancient law. Fine, Moonhaven, Serena ordered. Her captain hesitated. Obsidian territory is protected. Then do not invade it. Enter with papers. She opened Evelyn's former desk and removed a High Regent travel document stolen months earlier through a bribed courier. The embossed seal was genuine. Only the name would need changing. Bring me the child alive, Serena said. Kill the mother before she can call a trial. Far from Crown Fang, Moonhaven's western gate opened just after midnight. The guard inspected the High Regent seal, saw Evelyn's authority pressed into the wax, and stepped aside. 4 covered wagons rolled into the sleeping settlement. Inside the first, beneath sacks of grain, silver chains waited for Maeve. The forged wagons reached Moonhaven's nursery before dawn. Evelyn was already waiting. She had recognized the copied High Regent seal from the pressure pattern in the wax. Whoever forged it had used a genuine document, but they had pressed the stamp too deeply, crushing the crescent's lower edge. Cassian wanted soldiers at every door. Evelyn refused. If they see an army, they will take Maeve hostage. Instead, she ordered the nursery emptied through the cellar passage and placed one lamp beside an empty cradle. When the first kidnapper entered, Evelyn watched from the rafters above the storeroom. 4 men followed him. All carried silver chains. Evelyn dropped behind the last one and drove her elbow into his neck. Cassian's guards sealed the exits, while Mara pulled Maeve through the hidden passage. The fight ended quickly, but not bloodlessly. One attacker shifted before Evelyn could reach him. Cassian struck the wolf aside, taking claws across his shoulder. Evelyn used the opening to press her silver dagger beneath the kidnapper's jaw. Who sent you? The man laughed until Evelyn placed the forged travel paper against his chest. You entered under my authority, she said. That makes every crime committed here an act of war in my name. His confidence broke. Serena Voss, he confessed. She ordered the child taken alive. You were supposed to die before the sovereign trial. Maeve appeared in Mara's arms at the end of the corridor, frightened but unharmed. Evelyn crossed the distance and held her daughter against her chest. Maeve buried her face in Evelyn's neck. Bad men wanted me, the child whispered. They will never reach you again. It was not comfort. It was a decision. For 3 years, Evelyn had hidden to keep Maeve safe. Serena had proven that hiding would only make their enemies bolder. Before sunrise, Evelyn pressed the Asterian seal into a sovereign trial summons. 2 independent alphas signed as witnesses. Cassian signed last. By noon, the Moonhaven delegation rode east. They reached Crown Fang's border beneath a sky heavy with snow. Royal guards blocked the stone bridge, arrows drawn, while council soldiers watched from the ridge. Their captain raised a council notice. High Regent Evelyn Hart is forbidden from entering royal territory. Evelyn dismounted. She wore no crown and no Luna jewels. A dark coat covered her travel leathers. At her throat rested the moonstone pendant. Maeve remained in a guarded carriage behind Cassian's line. Evelyn lifted the trial scroll. Under the sovereign trial covenant, no king, council, or army may deny an Asterian claimant passage after 2 alpha witnesses have sealed the summons. The captain's face changed when he saw the crescent and 7 stars. Council archers raised their bows. Cassian's warriors moved forward. Evelyn lifted one hand, stopping them. Then Rowan appeared on the opposite side of the bridge. He looked older than the man who had taken her ring. Exhaustion had carved shadows beneath his eyes, but his alpha presence still pressed against every wolf nearby. The damaged mate bond tightened painfully. Rowan stared at Evelyn as though the dead had returned. Then Maeve pushed aside the carriage curtain. Her dark blue eyes found his. Rowan stopped breathing. The child carried his scent beneath Evelyn's, unmistakable and alive. His wolf recognized her before his mind could accept the truth. "My daughter," he whispered. Evelyn stepped between him and the carriage. "You have no claim until the court determines what rights you did not already surrender." The words struck him harder than any weapon. Rowan looked at the guards. "Lower your bows." The royal guard obeyed. The council soldiers did not, but too many of them remembered Evelyn's winter convoys and the medicine she had sent to their families. One by one, their weapons lowered as well. Evelyn crossed the bridge without asking Rowan's permission. By evening, the great hall was full. Serena sat in the Luna's seat, wearing white silk and the moonstone Luna ring. Gideon stood beside the throne, flanked by council elders and armed men. The doors opened. Evelyn entered with Cassian at her side. But when she approached the dais, he deliberately stepped back. She stood alone before them, not as Rowan's discarded mate, not as Cassian's protected woman. As High Regent of Moonhaven, Serena gripped the throne. "You have no place here." Evelyn raised the Asterian trial scroll. "I did not return from my old place." The Luna ring flashed. Serena screamed. A crack split the moonstone from edge to center. The ring slid from her burned finger and struck the floor before Evelyn's boots. Evelyn picked it up with an evidence cloth. She did not put it on. Then she handed 3 sealed summonses to the royal herald. One for Serena Voss, one for Gideon Voss. Her gaze settled on Rowan. "And the first trial will belong to Alpha King Rowan Vale." The sovereign trial began beneath the first moonstone at midnight. Every Alpha in the Dominion stood inside the great hall. Pack members crowded the galleries while the moon court formed a half-circle around the dais. Evelyn stood alone at the center, the cracked Luna ring sealed inside a glass evidence box before her. Rowan occupied no throne. He stood among the accused. Gideon Voss spoke first. Evelyn Hart conspired with Obsidian Ridge, transferred royal supplies without permission, and returned with a foreign army to seize the crown. Evelyn placed both hands upon the trial table. "Then examine everything I have done." The Moon Court opened Moonhaven's ledgers, trade contracts, border reports, and military records. Alpha Rena confirmed that Evelyn's grain shipments had gone to starving villages. Stonebrook's Alpha testified that no weapons had ever been purchased with Crownfang silver. Cassian submitted Obsidian's original transport logs. "The wagons carried food," he said, "not maps." The council ledger displayed during Evelyn's banishment was placed beside the original Mason had preserved. The forged entries used the wrong accounting cipher. Evelyn's private marks proved the genuine funds had been reserved for Eastern children before palace expenses. Gideon's confidence began to crack. Then Cassian presented the assassination order recovered after Maeve's birth. "The seal is royal," Gideon argued. Mason opened the royal seal logbook. On the night this order was issued, the king's seal was not in Rowan's possession. Elder Gideon signed it out for emergency military correspondence and returned it the following morning. The copied seal carried the same hairline fracture found on the mold seized from Gideon's estate. The galleries erupted. Moon Court guards struck their staffs against the floor until silence returned. Dr. Nora Keene stepped forward with 2 medical files. The first is Serena Voss's true examination. She was never pregnant. The second confirms Evelyn Hart showed signs of a 6-week pregnancy on the night she was expelled. Serena's face went white. "You helped her," she hissed. "I recorded the truth." Mason activated the original security crystal. The image filled the air above the hall. It showed Serena's servant wearing Evelyn's cloak. A hired courier accepted a false map while Serena watched from behind a screen. Moments later, Gideon ordered the crystal editor to replace the servant's face with Evelyn's. Rowan closed his eyes. He had watched the altered version 3 years earlier and called it proof. The captured kidnapper was brought forward in silver restraints. He testified that Serena had ordered Maeve taken alive and Evelyn killed before the trial. Serena moved before anyone expected it. She seized a guard's dagger and lunged. Rowan stepped between her and Evelyn, but the royal guard reached Serena first. They forced her to the floor as the Luna ring inside the evidence box flashed violently. Evelyn placed one bleeding fingertip against the cracked moonstone. Blood memory filled the hall. Gideon appeared inside the vision wearing the stolen Luna ring. Evelyn's mother stood before him, wounded but unbowed. "You cannot erase the law," Ilara Asterion said. Gideon drove a silver blade into her heart. The memory vanished. No one spoke. Rowan stepped into the center of the court. "I was deceived," he said. "But deception does not absolve me." Gideon shouted for him to remain silent. Rowan continued. I knew the evidence had not been independently examined. I knew Evelyn had not received the 3-seal inquiry required by law. I chose Serena because I feared losing Gideon's army, the council's support, and my throne. His gaze found Evelyn's. I chose power over the woman who had protected my people better than I ever did. The confession moved through the hall like a blade. Rowan knelt. I love you. I have no right to ask. But if any part of our bond remains, return to Crownfang. Return to me. Evelyn felt the damaged mate bond trembling between them. Once, those words would have healed everything she believed broken. Now they only proved how far she had traveled. I forgive the man who finally told the truth, she said. But I will not return to the king who required my destruction before he learned my value. She turned to the Moon Court. I request permanent severance. Rowan's face broke, but he bowed his head. I consent. Silver light wrapped around them. The mate bond tore free without violence, dissolving into the moonstone like smoke. Evelyn inhaled, and for the first time in years, Rowan's emotions were absent from her body. Rowan removed his crown. He placed it at her feet. Then rule better than I did. Evelyn looked past the crown toward the 7 packs waiting for her answer. 3 months after the sovereign trial, the Moon Court delivered its final judgments beneath a clear winter sky. Gideon Voss was convicted of treason, murder, theft of war levies, and conspiracy against the crown. His estates, mines, and private armies were seized. Every stolen silver mark was redirected to the villages his council had starved. Serena was stripped of title, property, and family name before being taken to the Moon Fortress for life. Serena did not cry when the ring was removed from evidence and locked away. She cried when the guards replaced her white silk with gray prison cloth and no one bowed. Rowan watched from the gallery without speaking. He had surrendered the crown before sentencing began, and the Moon Court accepted his abdication. Mason Reed became acting alpha of Crownfang until the pack could choose its next leader under the revised law. Rowan left Moonspire Palace with 1 travel bag and no escort. His first assignment was rebuilding the eastern granaries that had collapsed during Gideon's rule. Villagers who once lowered their heads now watched him carry timber through mud. He accepted their silence. He accepted their anger. Regret no longer lived in speeches. It lived in the work he performed without knowing whether Evelyn would ever forgive him enough to speak his name kindly again. Maeve knew only that Rowan sent letters. Evelyn read each one before placing it in a wooden box beside her daughter's bed. He never called himself father. He wrote about rivers, repaired roofs, and the blue flowers blooming near Crownfang's border. One day, when Maeve was old enough to decide, the choice to answer would belong to her. Blood created responsibility, Evelyn believed. It did not create ownership. At Moonhaven, the 5 packs gathered in the rebuilt river square to sign the Moonhaven Accord. The document ended the old custom that allowed an alpha to remove a Luna without trial. From that day forward, civilian stores, inheritance decisions, and sanctuary orders required equal seals from both offices. Any leader, male or female, could be removed by a public vote. Evelyn signed last, using the High Regent seal. The 7 packs then offered her the silver crown. Evelyn looked at the empty throne displayed beneath the pavilion and declined. She would not replace one absolute ruler with another, even if the new ruler was herself. Moonhaven would remain a coalition, and Crownfang would choose its own future. Power, she had learned, became dangerous the moment people mistook gratitude for permanent obedience. After the ceremony, Evelyn carried the cracked Luna ring into the public archive. Serena's blood had been cleaned from the silver, but the fracture through the moonstone remained. Evelyn placed it inside a glass case beside the forged ledger and the original severance paper. A plaque beneath them explained how law had failed when fear became more valuable than truth. The ring would never again be used as proof that one person owned another. Cassian waited outside beneath the archive steps. His shoulder had healed, though a silver scar remained where Maeve's kidnapper had struck him. He held no ring. He carried no mating contract. For 3 years, he had stood beside Evelyn, without asking her pain to become payment. Now, he offered only his hand. "Will you let me continue walking with you?" he asked. Evelyn studied him, remembering every door he had opened and every boundary he had honored. Trust had survived his secret, but it had not escaped unchanged. 1 year, she said. No claim, no mark, no promises made for me. Cassian smiled. 1 year then. She placed her hand in his because she chose to, not because any bond commanded it. Maeve ran across the square chasing falling petals, then stopped before the archive case. "Mama, do I have to be a Luna someday?" Evelyn knelt and tucked a curl behind her daughter's ear. Around them stood packs that had learned crowns were duties, not chains. "No," Evelyn said. "You do not have to become anything because of your blood. You will choose." Maeve smiled and ran into sunlight. Behind the glass, the Luna ring remained silent, while Evelyn walked toward the future she had chosen. So, Evelyn's story closes here. Are you still with me after everything she survived? She was betrayed by the man who should have trusted her, condemned by people who never asked for the truth, and replaced before her wounds had even begun to bleed. Yet she did not spend her strength begging someone to recognize her value. She walked away in pain because staying would have cost her dignity. That may be the quiet lesson in her journey. We cannot control who misunderstands us, who believes a lie, or who chooses convenience over loyalty. We can control what we do next. We can refuse to let another person's mistake become our identity. We can grieve without surrendering our self-respect, rebuild without announcing every step, and choose ourselves without becoming cruel. Evelyn did not win because Rowan regretted losing her. She won because his regret was no longer necessary for her peace. And honestly, that is a powerful place to reach, though preferably without poisoned wine, royal trials, and an entire wolf council causing trouble. If her choice spoke to you, comment one word: dignity. And if this story stayed with you, gently tap like, share it with someone who may need the reminder, and subscribe for more stories of betrayal, strength, and second chances.